There are places in the human mind where memory does not end with death. Across the world, in the silent moments before dawn, there are whispers of lives once lived, faces once known, and deaths once felt. They surface in the minds of children too young to understand what past life even means. Yet they remember, not dreams, not imagination, but memories, vivid, insistent, and terrifyingly precise. In this journey, we step beyond reason, into the realm where science falters and the soul speaks, where 10 souls across the world have torn open the veil between life and death and remembered who they once were. These are not myths. They are documented cases, investigated by scientists, psychiatrists, and spiritual researchers, and each story begins the same way, with a whisper from another life, calling back. 1. The girl who remembered her husband, Shanti Devi, India, 1930s, New Delhi. Oh, 30s. A little girl named Shanti sat in her classroom, staring at the chalkboard, her small hand clutching a stub of chalk. Her teacher had asked her to write her name. Instead, she wrote something else, a name no one had ever taught her. Lugdi Devi, she said quietly. That's who I am. The other children laughed, but Shanti didn't smile. She spoke of a husband named Kedarnath, of a yellow house in a faraway town called Mathura, and of a child she had died giving birth to. She spoke in the dialect of that region, one she had never heard in her life. Her parents were horrified. The child was only 4, but every night she would cry and whisper, "I must go home. My real home is in Mathura." One day her father gave in. He wrote a letter to a man named Kedarnath, the name she repeated in her sleep. Weeks later, a man arrived at their doorstep, the very same Kedarnath. He came with his son, and when Shanti saw them, she ran forward, tears streaming down her face. "That's my husband," she said. "And this is my son." The adult stood frozen. How could a child know these names, these faces, the exact scar on the man's arm, the places in a home miles away she had never seen? Kedar tested her. "If you truly are Lugdi," he said, "then tell me, what did I whisper to you before you died?" Shanti's eyes glistened. "You promised to never marry again," she said. "But you did." Kedar dropped to his knees. It was true. The news spread through India like fire. People came from across the country to see the girl who remembered her past life. Even Mahatma Gandhi sent a team to investigate. They took Shanti to Mathura. She walked through its narrow streets like someone who had been there 1,000 times. She pointed to the house she used to live in, identified hidden rooms, family belongings, even a secret drawer no one had opened for years. Every test confirmed her story. The family of Lugdi Devi, who had died just a few years before Shanti was born, recognized her words, her mannerisms, her memories. Scientists were baffled. Psychologists could not explain it. There was no connection between the families. Shanti Devi's life became a quiet enigma. She grew up choosing a simple life away from attention, yet she never denied what she remembered. "Death," she once said, "is only the closing of the eyes. When you open them again, you are somewhere else." Even today, her story stands as one of the most meticulously documented reincarnation cases in history, a tale that blurs the line between life and what lies beyond. A reminder that sometimes the soul refuses to forget. 2. The boy who remembered the war, James Leininger, United States, 2000s. Some stories of past lives are whispered by monks in temples or written in ancient texts. But this one began in a quiet American suburb, in the laughter of a 2-year-old boy who couldn't stop dreaming of fire. James Leininger was just a toddler when the nightmares began. His parents, Bruce and Andrea, would wake to the sound of screaming. "Airplane crash! Plane on fire! Little man can't get out." Night after night, the same terror. A boy barely old enough to speak, thrashing in his sleep, crying about a plane crashing into the sea. At first, they thought it was just a phase, perhaps too many war movies or toy airplanes. But there were no such movies in their home, and the way he spoke was different. Too precise, too real. One morning, as Andrea folded his clothes, James looked up and said calmly, "My airplane got shot down. My friends were on the Natoma," she froze. "Natoma?" she asked. Yeah, he said, Natama Bay, a name no toddler could possibly know. Bruce began to research. There it was, USS Natoma Bay, an escort carrier from World War II deployed in the Pacific. The boy would draw airplanes, hundreds of them, with uncanny accuracy. He knew the exact model, a Corsair, and said it was hit by the Japanese near Iwo Jima. When Bruce asked who the little man in his dreams was, James replied, Me, James the pilot. The father felt his heart tremble. His son's name was James? James who? He asked carefully. The boy thought for a moment. James Houston. James M. Houston. That name would change everything. Through months of searching, Bruce discovered a pilot named James M. Houston Jr., a young Navy officer who had died in 1945 when his plane was shot down near Iwo Jima. The details matched perfectly. When shown pictures of W-plane aircraft, the child could identify every single one. He even corrected his father's terminology, naming parts of the plane like a trained pilot. But what truly unnerved the family was when James met veterans from the USS Natoma Bay. He called them by name. He remembered where they had sat in the mess hall, who was standing near the turret when it jammed, who had survived the mission. One old man, Jack Larson, burst into tears when James pointed to him and said, You were there when my plane got hit. The room fell silent. There was no way a boy born 50 years later could know any of that. Over the years, researchers and skeptics tried to explain the phenomenon. Coincidence, hidden cues, genetic memory. But none could explain the precision of his recollections. When the Leiningers finally contacted the Houston family, something extraordinary happened. James ran to an old portrait and cried, That's me! That's my picture from when I was big. He then told the Houstons about a blue car his father used to drive, a detail that was never public. The family confirmed it instantly. The story made headlines around the world. The boy who remembered his past life as a white pilot. But beneath the fame was something deeper, the haunting realization that death, for some, might not be the end of the story. Years later, as James grew older, the memories began to fade, like mist in morning sunlight. Yet, when asked about it as a teenager, he still said softly, I don't dream about the crash anymore. I think I came back to finish something. His words carried an eerie calm, the calm of a soul that had seen too much sky, too much fire, and perhaps one too many lifetimes. Science continues to search for explanations. Psychologists debate, historians verify, skeptics dismiss. But somewhere between the silence of a child's nightmare and the roaring engines of a Corsair lies a truth humanity still cannot touch. A truth that maybe, just maybe, the soul remembers what the mind cannot. And sometimes that memory comes back, screaming through fire. 3. The dancing girl who returned from another life. Swarnlata Mishra, India, 1940s. The soul, it seems, does not always rest where the body dies. Sometimes it dances its way back, through music, through laughter, through the fragile mind of a child. The year was 1948. In a small town of Shahpur, India, a little girl named Swarnlata Mishra was born into a family of teachers, quiet, modest people with no interest in mysteries or miracles. Yet by the time Swarnlata was 3, strange things began to happen. When traveling with her father to another town, Katni, she suddenly became animated, her eyes bright, her voice trembling with joy. I know this place, she exclaimed. Turn left. There is a house with blue doors. That's my home. Her father laughed, thinking it was childish imagination. But when the carriage turned left, there it was, a house, blue doors and all, just as she had said. Swarnlata ran toward it before anyone could stop her. She pointed at the balcony and whispered, That's where I used to sit and sing. Her father was shaken. He had never been here before. But his daughter spoke of people who had once lived there, of a man named Pandit Kedarnath and a woman named Bia Pathak, names that would later prove hauntingly real. In the weeks that followed, Swarnlata began recalling an entire other life. She said she had once been Bia Pathak, a woman who loved to dance, sing, and perform for guests. She spoke of her husband, her sons, the decorations in her old house, even where she hid her jewelry box. She described her own death too, calmly, as if recalling a distant dream. "I became sick," she said, "and then I slept. When I woke up, I was a baby again." Her father, torn between curiosity and fear, began documenting everything she said. Word spread quickly, and the case soon reached Dr. Ian Stevenson, the renowned psychiatrist from the University of Virginia, who would later dedicate his life to reincarnation research. Stevenson traveled to India to investigate. What he found defied all rational explanation. Swarnlata, now 10, met Bia Pathak's surviving family. She recognized each of them, by name, by voice, by the smallest detail. When one of Bia's sons tried to trick her, pretending to be a servant, she looked him straight in the eyes and said softly, "Don't joke with me, Manoj. You were my son." The boy fell silent. Then she described the family's hidden treasures, a secret drawer inside a wooden cabinet that contained Bia's gold necklace. The drawer was opened. The necklace was there. Stevenson's notes described the meeting as emotionally overwhelming. The family of the deceased woman wept, calling Swarnlata Bia reborn. Yet the girl herself seemed strangely composed. She was neither frightened nor amazed. "I came back because I loved music," she once told a visitor. "Maybe God gave me another chance to sing." What fascinated the researchers was not only the accuracy of her memories, but also her personality. Though raised in a conservative household, Swarnlata carried herself like a trained dancer. She would sometimes perform gestures and postures of classical Indian dance, ones she had never been taught. When asked to perform before musicians, she seemed to recall melodies from another era, songs that had gone out of fashion long before she was born. It was as though, Stevenson wrote, the soul had carried not just memory, but art itself, the music, rhythm, and grace of a life once lived. The case of Swarnlata Mishra remains one of the most documented and convincing reincarnation accounts in modern history. Her memories persisted for years, unwavering, consistent, across interviews and investigations. And then, as adolescence came, the memories began to fade, slowly, quietly, like candlelight in dawn. But when asked years later if she still believed she was once Bia Pathak, Swarnlata smiled and said, "Perhaps not was, perhaps am, because the song never truly ends, does it? It just finds a new voice." Her words linger, a poetic truth that echoes beyond reason. Perhaps the soul, in its eternal waltz between death and rebirth, carries more than memory. Perhaps it carries the rhythm of its unfinished song, waiting for another life to dance again. 4. The boy who found his family from another life. Imad El-Awar, Lebanon, 1950s. Some children are born with laughter in their eyes. Others are born with remembrance. In the quiet mountain village of Shamoun, Lebanon, a boy named Imad El-Awar came into the world in 1942. He was like any other child until the day he began to speak of another home, another mother, another name. At the age of 2, he would wander to the window and point toward the distant hills. "That's where I live," he'd say softly. "Not here. My house is in Kirbet." His parents would smile uneasily. Kirbet was a village miles away, a place they had never visited. But Imad spoke with conviction, describing his past life as a man named Mohammed, the son of Jamileh, and the owner of a white house near the mosque. He said he had 2 sisters, a father who traded horses, and that he had died suddenly. "Because of my chest," he whispered, placing his small hand over his heart. The villagers dismissed it as fantasy. But as Imad grew older, the memories sharpened, not faded. He knew songs from that village's dialect. He named people who lived there, merchants, elders, children, none of whom his family had ever met. Word reached Dr. Ian Stevenson, the same researcher who had investigated Swarnlata Mishra's case in India. Intrigued by the consistency of Imad's claims, Stevenson traveled to Lebanon in the 1960s, beginning what would become one of the most meticulously verified reincarnation studies in the world. With permission, the boy was taken to Khirbet Ruha, the village he claimed as his home. The car rolled through winding roads, olive trees casting shadows on sunlit stone walls. Imad's face grew tense. Then suddenly he cried out, "Stop! This is my street." He jumped out, running toward a small house with peeling paint. "This is where I live," he said. "My mother's name is Jamile." Inside the house, an elderly woman emerged, trembling. Her name was indeed Jamile. She stared at the boy's face, her breath caught in her throat. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I'm Mohammed," he replied. "Your son. You cried when I died." The woman collapsed to her knees. In the days that followed, Imad met other members of the family he claimed as his own. He identified them without hesitation, calling each by name, recalling stories no outsider could know: a lost goat, a broken jug, the day of his fever before he died. He described hidden rooms, family relics, and even where a precious heirloom was buried, beneath a stone in the courtyard. They dug there. The heirloom was found. Dr. Stevenson meticulously recorded every word, every reaction. Out of 57 verifiable statements made by the boy, 51 were confirmed accurate by the family of the deceased Mohammed. The probability of coincidence was infinitesimal, yet the boy himself seemed unaware of how extraordinary it all was. "I just wanted to come home," he said simply. When he was shown a photo of Mohammed, the man he claimed to have been, he touched the image gently and said, "That's me, when I was big." The physical resemblance was faint, but the emotional connection was undeniable. The family began treating Imad as if their lost son had truly returned. His biological parents allowed him to visit often, though they could never understand what invisible force tied him to that other life. As the years passed, the memories began to fade, as they always do in such cases. By his teenage years, Imad remembered only fragments: a sense of belonging, a feeling of unfinished love, a longing for the hills of Kerbet. When asked later if he still believed he was Mohammed reborn, Imad looked at the horizon and said, "When I close my eyes, I still know the way home. But I don't think it matters whose home it is. Maybe every life is just one step closer to remembering where we all began." His words carried the strange calm of someone who had looked death in the eye. Not once, but twice. For Dr. Stevenson, the case of Imad El-Awar became one of his strongest pieces of evidence for reincarnation, documented in detail in his book, 20 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation. Yet, even the good doctor wrote at the end of his notes, "Science may verify the facts, but only the soul can recognize the truth." And so, the boy from Bichamun returned to his ordinary life, the echoes of another fading into silence. But somewhere in those Lebanese hills, under the olive trees and golden dust, the two names, Imad and Mohammed, remain intertwined. Two lives, one spirit, a reminder that perhaps the heart never forgets the road back to itself. 5. The woman who remembered the 19th century through hypnosis. Bridie Murphy, USA, Ireland, 1950s. Sometimes the veil between lives does not lift gently. Sometimes it is torn open, by accident, by curiosity, by the quiet voice of a hypnotist in a small American living room. It began in 1952 in Colorado Springs, where a young housewife named Virginia Teague agreed to a harmless experiment. Her friend Maury Bernstein was a businessman fascinated by hypnosis. He wanted to test whether memories could reach beyond childhood, perhaps into the mysterious void before birth. Virginia laughed when he asked, "You think I was Cleopatra?" she teased. But that night, as she reclined in the soft glow of a lamp, something shifted. Her voice changed, the pitch, the accent, even the rhythm of her speech. "Who are you?" Bernstein asked gently, a pause. Then a soft Irish lilt replied, "I'm Bridie Murphy. I was born in Cork, Ireland." In the year 1798, Bernstein leaned forward. Her eyes remained closed, yet her expression had transformed. Serene, distant, as if she stood somewhere far beyond the room. Over the next months, multiple hypnosis sessions unfolded. Each time, Virginia, or Bridie, would speak with the same unmistakable Irish accent. She described cobblestone streets, the scent of peat smoke, the chill of the Atlantic wind. She spoke of her childhood, her home on Baldwin Street, her father Duncan, her mother Kathleen, and the man she later married, Sean Bryan McCarthy. She remembered a small wooden church where she was wed, the priest's name, the song sung, the gown she wore. She recalled market days, dances, laughter, and grief, the full tapestry of a life lived a century before she was born. But it wasn't just words. She sang old Irish tunes, ones that had nearly vanished from collective memory. She used idioms, dialects, and details consistent with 19th century Ireland, details later confirmed by linguists and historians. When asked how she died, Bridie's voice grew quiet. "I fell down the stairs," she said softly. "I hurt my head. Then I woke up again." But it wasn't Ireland anymore. The story, recorded and later published as The Search for Bridie Murphy, became a sensation. Newspapers across America exploded with headlines. "Woman lives again after 100 years?" "Housewife speaks Gaelic in trance." "Proof of reincarnation?" Thousands attended lectures. Millions bought the book. But fame, as always, drew skeptics. Investigators searched Ireland for any record of Bridie Murphy, birth, marriage, or death. None was found. They claimed Virginia's memories were a construction, perhaps drawn from childhood influences or subconscious echoes of stories once overheard. A journalist even discovered that, as a girl, Virginia had lived across from an Irish immigrant named Bridie Murphy Corkle. The skeptics declared victory. The mystery, they said, was solved. Yet, something didn't add up. Bridie's descriptions of early 1800s Irish customs, her pronunciation of regional words, her knowledge of obscure cultural details, all were verified as authentic. Details Virginia could not have possibly known. And so, the story refused to die. To this day, some believe the connection was real, that Virginia had somehow tapped into a buried layer of the soul's memory. Others say she accessed a collective memory, or perhaps the lingering spirit of a woman long gone. But beyond the arguments, what remained haunting was the sound of her voice, the gentle cadence of another century slipping through modern lips. In one of her final hypnotic sessions, when asked what she saw beyond death, Bridie whispered, "There was light." And I knew I'd go back again. We all do. The room was silent. Bernstein stopped recording and sat still for a long time, watching Virginia slowly awaken, her eyes fluttering, her face uncertain, as if returning from a long journey she could not explain. When he told her what she'd said, she shook her head. "Bridie? Who's Bridie?" She laughed nervously, though her voice trembled. "I don't even know an Irish song." But somewhere in that twilight between waking and dream, perhaps the echo of another woman lingered, the memory of laughter in an Irish home 2 centuries old, waiting for the next soul to remember. The name Bridie Murphy became legend, not just as a mystery, but as a mirror reflecting humanity's oldest question. Do we end, or do we return? Maybe the answer was already given, not by science nor faith, but by that quiet whisper under hypnosis. We all go back again. What is memory?